the shape of the Ukrainian offensive is slow and steady still. They're wearing the Russians down, then trying to seize territory. Now, Russia equally is rushing a lot of troops into the area. They're bringing up a lot of their reserves, hastily mobilized conscripts. Now, they're low quality, but they are bringing in thousands of them and trying to stiffen what appear to be shorter defensive lines, with at the moment a reasonable degree of success, I think, certainly compared to a couple of weeks ago. It's not going to be a pushover for Ukraine, but I think they are in a position to keep that offensive going, keep wearing down the Russians. The Russians equally hoping that the Ukrainians break themselves trying to get through Russian lines.
And it appears the Russians are reinforcing crossing points across the Dnipro River. Do you think that's in preparation for a further withdrawal from Kherson?
I mean, it certainly seems that the Russian high commanders, if you like, earlier in the conflict, wanted to withdraw back from Kherson city, wanted to withdraw back behind the river, establish that as a very natural defensive barrier they could hold lightly, and kind of consolidate behind that. Now, that was vetoed earlier in the summer when Russia had more initiative. It does seem that with the recent change of command in Ukraine and Putin arguably taking a step back and letting the military get on with it, that they've therefore started to consolidate on that plan. But nonetheless, the loss of Kherson city in particular, which is on that right-hand bank, on the far bank of the Dnieper River, is a major problem.
There's talk about whether the Russians will strike a dam in the Kherson region, the Nova Kakhovka. Do you think that's likely, and why would they do that?
The dam is a very interesting aspect of this. It is one of the most sustainable crossing points on the river, although it's not wide. Obviously, it's harder to knock out than a bridge or ferries and things like that. It also maintains the reservoir for the nuclear power plant at Zaporizhzhia. It has a role in that. Its other critical role actually is also it's where the entrance is to the Crimean Canal, which runs water down into Crimea. Now, that lack of water was actually potentially one of the things that helped precipitate the conflict earlier this year. Not the only thing, but Russia was always very bullish that Crimea could survive without this water supply. But actually, it looks, based on what we know now, that it was really struggling to maintain, certainly eastern Crimea. Now, having held it all summer, they've had the chance to top up the reservoirs in Crimea. So actually, at this point, they can probably afford to lose control for a period of time. But nonetheless, it remains a strategic objective for Russia to control that area. So I think the act of blowing the dam, were they to do that, it gives them a military advantage if they're back across the river, in that they can make it very, very hard to cross south of the dam. And it stops Ukrainians from actually crossing at the dam itself. So the thing that Russia has been able to do is keep supplies flowing across there to a certain extent. They want to deny that to Ukrainians, so blowing the dam would do that. But doing it with Russian troops on the far bank is obviously an extremely difficult decision. It's not to say they wouldn't do it. Again, if they're blaming the Ukrainians for it, they might say that proves that the Ukrainians must have done it. Whereas, in fact, of course, I think it's most likely the Russians would. It's really not in Ukraine's interest to do it at this point, and it would make an obstacle crossing for them much harder over the winter. So there's only one side that benefits from the dam being blown at this point.
If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel.